Hello, everybody. Welcome on the Lights on Data show. Today, we're going to tackle the 3 pitfalls to avoid in doing a data strategy. And we're so lucky to have Dora with us today. If you haven't watched her or listened to her on our live version of the podcast, please do. She's just an amazing speaker, full of knowledge, and just a joy to talk to overall. Welcome, Dora.
Oh, thank you, George, so much for that very kind introduction. I'm the lucky and fortunate one to be here. Thank you for having me back. It's my absolute pleasure to be here.
No, likewise. To those that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Dora Busias, and I've been in IT for almost 30 years now, but I've always been very interested in the data space as well as enterprise architecture because I believe in a solid foundation as things change, that can flex and scale. But then again, with that solid foundation, I consider data the lifeblood of every organization. So I've focused on a lot of that. And of my almost 30 years, I want to say 2/3 of my career have been in roles that are obviously relevant to that, but also have enterprise level accountability. Being very lucky to work in industries like healthcare, financial services, a little bit of retail, insurance. And it's good to have seen actually what we do, what we say around data information architecture, data governance, data strategy, enterprise architecture, all of that, how it's the same or differs also across industries. So grateful for that opportunity in my career.
See you really as this guru in this area because I'm yet to meet a person that has the breadth of knowledge within the data space that you do.
Thank you so much, George. I appreciate that. But here's the little secret, I would say, that more than anything else, and what has helped me in my career is understanding the business that I'm in, the functional side of things. And okay, a little spoiler, but that has something to do with one of the pitfalls too. We'll talk about it.
To that, because there's no better person out there to walk us through these pitfalls.
Thank you, George. I think it was maybe last month or so, I wrote an article. It was published on CIO Review, the magazine. And it was really what to avoid on the way to being data driven, avoid these top 3 pitfalls. Like I said, a long time in this space, really working in the data space. And a lot of it is just driving change, right? One of the top 3 things, at least in my view, the top 3 traps that people might fall into in implementing a data strategy. And the very first one was that, you know what? Data strategy is really not about the data. It is about the business. That's why I was saying the spoiler alert, right? It is about the business. It is not about the technicalities, the data, the architectural approaches, the best practices. All of that, it's great. And we need to understand the actual domain and bring. It's really all about how can I help my business go ahead? It's not about implementing this data thing or that data thing for the sake of it, right? Because it's great, but it's how's it helping my business? So it is about my business. Typically, when I think about that, I think about how can I help my business grow, better revenues, better customer experience, bringing in better revenues? How can I perhaps use data to streamline my operations, to cut down costs, to make it a healthier bottom line? How can I use data to save and mitigate risk? So these are the kinds of things. So the business relationships, either internal as well as with external stakeholders. So relatively quickly talking about it, I would say that's the number one trap. It is not about the data strategy, it is about the business.
And a lot of people do fall into that trap. And what are your recommendations then to learn more about the business and making sure that you're really understanding how should you tie in the data strategy to those business needs and business requirements? Is it having a lot of meetings, one-on-ones, trying to be embedded in their sort of regular activities, maybe even some job shadowing at one point?
Yeah, those are all great tips, George. And I would say it starts with being curious, having a curious mindset, asking a lot of questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. If somebody says, oh, this is what it is, I advocate for that 5 whys model. Okay, great. So tell me more about it. I ask a lot of questions about, okay, so how are we going to use if we do this? What is the purpose of it? In fact, a couple of years back, I had developed something that I call the business data purpose mindset. I had spoken about that at conference, and it was geared more towards business analysts, but it has all to do with, okay, if we do that, how is it going to help my business? What decisions is it going to drive? Why this and not something else? Which also asking those questions helps us not only really get down to the bottom of what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is not implement a data lake, implement this type of architecture, bring in this that technology, you know, even have great data quality rates. It has to map back to how is it going to help my business? Be curious, ask questions. Absolutely, you can shadow. But even when you're working on a project, don't take for granted what people are saying. By being curious, asking the questions, and always thinking about the purpose. What is it going to drive? How we're going to use it? And then what happens next? It actually brings value to the conversation, because even the folks that are asking about things, and it could be folks sitting on the business functional side, it helps focus on what it is that we absolutely need. Because the technical stuff, because we have that tendency sometimes to just talk about technology, and that connects with the second pitfall I'm going to talk about. The technical stuff, it's a tool for us to get there. So hopefully that answers your question. But the meetings, the reading about it, simply enough, I would say a little bit starting on communication. Better communicate helps as well. You can better communicate, you can better articulate, but also you can better listen. And regardless of where you sit, really try to understand the business strategy and the business goals. What is the business really trying to do? And how does it work even on a macro level, the business? What do we do?
Right.
If we need healthcare, if we need finance, what does this mean? How does the business make money? How does it attract customers? What products do we have? So even those basic fundamentals, I think, help.
I agree. I think it really helps to understand. And I think we do, but we sometimes forget that we're actually all part of the same team. We're working for the same company. We're trying to achieve the same goals there. And yes, sometimes we do treat it as a service client relationship, but it should really be more of a partnership collaboration. And obviously comes two ways, both ways.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, George. And of the mind that sometimes actually I almost finding offending people separate between business and IT. I do sometimes only for the sake of the conversation, but really it's part of the business, right? So again, no matter how technical the role, no matter what we see, to understanding the fundamentals of the business that we're in, not only the vertical, the industry, like how it's happening, but then the specifics of our own organization, right?
So you were alluding to the second pitfall.
The second pitfall is that the data strategy and implementing it is not an IT only undertaking. Throughout my career, I've heard folks say, oh, data in the systems is great. IT doesn't know what they're doing. IT owns the data, let's fix it. And I've heard people sitting on the technology area saying the business doesn't get it. So I think, and you alluded to it before yourself, this is not an IT only undertaking. This is a partnership. I like to think of it as a quote unquote contractual partnership, meaning it is a partnership with very clear roles and responsibilities and a clear race, how we work with each other. We cannot successfully implement the data strategy. And by the way, successful implementing for me, it means that it sustains. It actually drives change and makes things better. It doesn't mean I went live, roll out to this data management system. That is its success, but it's a small little milestone on a bigger thing when we're talking about data strategy. So for it to really sustain, to really help us move the needle, as they say, right, make, growth towards our business KPIs, our business goals, which is why we need to connect the data strategy to the business strategy. So for that to happen, we really need both the functional expertise, the technology expertise, and we need to know how we work well with each other with very clear roles and responsibilities and expectations, and coming to the table, respecting each other, getting the data to be better, because by making it better, let's say, I'll give you an example, right? It's a classic example. Say we are having shipping addresses for our customers. Say we have the addresses, some items may be missing. That's low quality. Okay, we want to work on making the quality better, right? Why? I would think about it from a business process. If I don't have the right data, that might delay shipping product to the customer. That's not good customer experience. It also means the cash flows of the organization are being impacted, right? I'm not going to possibly getting all the cash flow coming in sooner than later. So again, connected to the business, but to do all of that, it is not about just IT doing it. Yes, we can bring the right technology, we can bring the right practices, but then there's accountability and clear roles also on the business side. And obviously, when we have data governance teams, data information architecture teams, like teams that are very specific to working in the data space, they can help with the guardrails and put some of those practices, and then obviously engage with all the right folks to do it. But I've seen it too many times when typically if only IT tries it, yes, it's not sustainable, right? We might hit something small, but then it just falters. It's considered on the long term, it's considered a failure. If only business does it, again, there is very valuable expertise coming from the technology side that needs to come in. So we really need both. It's two sides of the same coin. So that's pitfall number two. I would say this is not just an IT undertaking, which sometimes people think of it that way, probably because we think the strategy is about tools and architectural approaches and implementing that versus thinking about how it helps the business.
And I
at the
think
core of
sometimes
it.
on the business side, they might get scared when they hear about data and they equate it to technology, like, okay, that's their problem. I want nothing to do with it.
Yes. And I love what you just said, George, because I think it's going to help us connect it to the third pitfall. The third pitfall, I was saying, it is very easy to underestimate the criticality of people, culture, and organizational change management. To your point, if sometimes folks in the business unit are scared and everything, this is why I was saying earlier too, the how we work together, the communication and other leadership behaviors is a big aspect of this, right? The trap is that it's so easy to underestimate the criticality of this in us being successful. In my mind, it is more critical than having the latest and greatest technology or the hitting the highest quality. What I should say, I don't think we can hit the highest quality unless we have that culture of people are engaged. They're part of this journey because depending where we start the maturity of the organization, it's even if we get a lot better at over a number of years, you keep on optimizing. There's not like a net, right? You're getting to the point, but then you keep on optimizing. So we need to understand, especially when we define the data strategy and implement, all along, start early, do it often, all along. Make sure that people understand their why. Why should they care? And then how do we engage them? You know, if it's IT or business driving or a combination of the two, there's many people that need to basically replace old habits of how they know they've been doing things. Because a lot with this too is change management in terms of getting folks across teams, across projects, across regions, divisions, functions to work with data strategy. A lot of it is for us to having a better understanding of our stakeholders and our relationships, the business. We have to understand our stakeholders, suppliers, customers, our products, whatever it is. We're talking about a lot of enterprise impact type master data here now. To get it to that point where we speak the common language, we have to get the folks across the projects and the teams and the regions and the functions, whatever it is, to come work together. So that's a huge dose of how do we best implement change management. So again, this is not a one-time thing. The change management, the having the clarity of who does what, the expectations, how we work together, and knowing how to lead, that's important. And that's what's going to get folks to engage. Because again, for this to succeed, everything goes back to people. Even if we implement the best system, the best processes, if people don't adopt those, it's not going to be successful. So the adoption, getting people all along and engaging actively, not just saying it, but then keep on doing whatever they're always doing, actively engage them. That takes really a lot of effort and very intentional
Yeah.
effort to make it happen. So that I think is a trap because so many times I've seen folks underestimate the importance of this in us being successful implementing the data strategy.
Definitely. Thank you, Dora, for making all of these aware to us so we can avoid it in the future and hopefully we'll just keep getting better at it. Where can people follow you and check out more content that you put out?
Oh, thank you for asking, George. And LinkedIn is the easiest way to find me, Dora Busias. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. And the topic that we spoke about today, like I said, I had published on CIA Review an article. I can make the link available so people can actually get more context about the things that we talked about today. And hopefully this is helpful. And I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me on, George.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to chatting with you again.
Same here.
Bye, everyone.